Can you talk a little bit more about how your relationship with John Gotti developed during this time? I mean, is he bringing you to the clubs with him, bringing you home? How was your relationship at this
It
time?
just it's just started to develop on a day-to-day basis. And I was going to the clubs, at his request. He would send guys to come get me, come have dinner with him. I'd get home at 7 o'clock. There'd be two guys at the door at 8 o'clock to meet him for dinner. And it just grew. It grew into a father-son relationship, and one which I enjoyed and he enjoyed. And we became, it became just that what it was. It was built on sincerity and integrity. And I became, his, an advisor to him. And, I was able to, in front of him, I talked freely to him on how I felt about various situations and various captains and associates and other people in the family. He would respect what I said. Not always agreed with what I said, but he would let me speak my mind. And that's really it. Just grew on a day-to-day basis, and it was something that it was nice. It was good.
Right. Now, at this point in your friendship and relationship with him, was everything above board, or did John bring you into any illegal activities or anything that he was involved in?
He brought me into no illegal activity, and he used to say to me, "You're a legitimate kid. Stay in your lane. You have an army if you need an army. I don't need you involved in this life. I don't want you involved in this life." But the government views that if you're friends with a mob boss, you're a co-conspirator, which was not true. Okay, they did indict me for perjury, and they did put me in jail for 7 months in the Lewisburg camp. They said I perjured myself. They asked me in the grand jury if John Gotti was the boss of the Gambino family. Now, they obviously didn't need me to tell him that, to tell the government that, because they knew that. They indicted him. So it was a setup by the prosecutor, who was a sick and demented person, this John Gleason, very, very sick, tormented man. And it ruined a lot of lives. He ruined Bruce Cutler. He ruined Mike Coiro. He put me in jail for no reason. He was a very, very demented. He was a creature, and that's how a lot of these power drunk prosecutors are. And now, of course, I wish John was here so he could see Trump taking these prosecutors to task,
right,
and taking the FBI to task. John always used to say, we're bad guys, he says, and we're criminals. He says, but the FBI is worse, and these agents are worse. And you know what? He was right.
Yeah.
The corruption within the FBI, the corruption within these prosecutors, unchecked power, drunk with power on all levels. And he was they ruin lives, and they go home and they don't care.
Mm-hmm.
They don't care. They're just evil, vindictive people. When you're dealing with the mafia guy what to expect, but you don't expect that from your government.
Right. Yeah, they seem to hide behind the facade of the government. And
well, look what they did to Trump. And now you see what Letitia James in New York, the Attorney General, she filled out fraudulent mortgage papers. If you did that and I did that, we'd be indicted. I want to see if they're going to indict Letitia James.
Yeah, I just saw something about that.
They have to see the government. They have to make these prosecutors do their job ethically, with checks and balances. Back in those days, there were no checks and balances. It was get Gotti at any cost, lie, cheat, do anything you have to do. On the highest levels of the Bureau, that's what they did.
With you being a pretty straight-laced kid at the time, why do you think John Gotti was attracted to you as far as a friend and a advisor?
Because when he asked me a question, I gave him a truthful answer. I didn't bullshit him. I didn't lie to him. I didn't, play the games that these captains or these other people would play, because they were so intimidated by him. Me and him one-on-one, if he would ask me a question, I would give him an answer, respectfully, of course. And and that's how it went. And that's what he respected about me. He didn't respect other people that would just blow smoke. He didn't respect that. 'Cause when John would ask you a question, he already knew the answer. That's the kind of guy he was. Very smart guy. Brilliant, brilliant man. 140 IQ. You know, so no one was fooling him. They thought they were fooling him, but they weren't fooling him.
Right.
Yeah.
So in a way, you have kind of the best of both worlds. You're a legit guy, but you have the backing and the friendship of a mob boss.
Correct. And John used to say that to me. He used to say, Lewis, you got the best of both worlds. He says, you have access to me 24/7.
Right.
Nobody had access to him 24/7, not even his own family.
We talked about this a few minutes ago. You briefly touched on this, but back in 1994, you're indicted for perjury and end up going to jail. I think you touched on it, but what actually led to that indictment where you went to jail?
They subpoenaed me. And obviously, if they indicted me on perjury, they investigated and couldn't get anything else. They asked me if I knew John Gotti was the boss of the Gambino family and if I knew Jackie Nose was a captain. So it was a setup. They didn't need me to tell them who the boss of the Gambino family was. And it's funny, Judge Glasser, who was a government judge, when he sentenced me, he said to Jamie Ornstein, who was John Gleason's protege, so to speak. Now I hear they don't talk. He said to Ornstein, he says, you mean you didn't know who the boss of the Gambino family was? So everybody, Leslie Lockwood, my probation officer, said to Judge Glasser, this case is not a case. This man should have never been indicted. Leslie Lockwood did my pre-sentence report. She says, this is nonsense. And Glasser agreed, but he still put me in jail.
Now,
because Glasser was a government judge. Yeah. He was their boy. He was the judge that, it's supposedly it goes into the barrel. It goes into the wheel. How come Glasser got every Gotti case? Every Gotti case went to Judge Leo Glasser.
Yeah.
Because he was the government's guy. He did take care of Tommy Gambino. Because Tommy knew how to play him. That's another story. And, he still gave 7 months to someone. 7 months to me was like 7 years.
Yeah.
I'm no tough guy.